morning. Welcome to your early morning intelligence update for June 23rd, 2026. Let's dive right into the facts. I'm your host, here to give you a calm, data-driven look at the escalating security situation unfolding across West Africa right now. Today, we're focusing on the complex and rapidly evolving events across Mali, Niger, and Nigeria. We'll be looking at the intelligence directly from our sources to give you a clear, objective understanding of what is actually happening on the ground. Now, before we pull up the operational data, a quick word about our sponsor, ProWave AI. They're the team behind the Stylo Intel Ops open source engine and Stylo News. It's their AI technology that is gathering, translating, and analyzing hundreds of global sources in real time to power the insights we're about to show you. All right, here's how we'll break this down today. We'll start with a regional security overview, look at the impacts and key decision makers, dive into public sentiment, and then wrap up with our near-term strategic forecast. Section 1. West Africa Security Overview, Mapping the Escalation. Taking a step back to look at the macro level really grounds the picture for us. We're zeroing in on Mali, Niger, and Nigeria. Looking at the broader geography, state control in these primary nations is facing serious mounting pressure from insurgent factions. What we're paying really close attention to is that highly vulnerable tri-border zone where Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso meet, as well as the Benin, Niger, Nigeria triangle. These spots are essentially acting as critical transit corridors for armed groups, making them absolute focal points for regional instability. Zooming into the specific combat zones reveals a significant spread of violence. For instance, we're tracking a noticeable increase in pressure right along the approaches to Bamako in Mali. And it doesn't stop there. There's a very clear spillover trajectory moving south from the Sahel, straight into northwestern Nigeria. We're talking specifically about the states of Kebbi, Sokoto, and Zamfara, which are dealing with deepening extremist entrenchment right now. So who are the actors driving this? Well, the intelligence points to a few principal jihadist networks. Over in Mali and Niger, the dominant forces are JNIM, that's an al-Qaeda-aligned umbrella group, and the Islamic State Sahel Province. Down in Nigeria, Boko Haram and the Islamic State West Africa Province remain deeply entrenched in the northeast, but we're seeing new elements trickling into the northwest. They operate using a hybrid strategy. It's a blend of a war of attrition against state militaries, combined with local governance penetration. They regularly exploit criminal networks, local banditry, and basically any gap in rural governance to sustain their logistics. Moving on to Section 2. Impacts and decision makers, cascading consequences. The ripple effects of all this insecurity are profound, and they operate on multiple levels. Locally, communities in places like Borno and Niger states are bearing the brunt of it, facing lethal attacks and massive forced displacements. On a regional scale, this instability is really straining the multinational joint task force. Niger's recent withdrawal has made joint border operations incredibly complicated. And internationally, this expansion is triggering broader counterterrorism concerns. Some models are even warning about potential long-term friction for global maritime and trade routes if this instability pushes further toward the coastal states. Now, regional leaders are actively trying to manage this, but their approaches differ. Take ECOWAS Commission President Omar Aliyu Touré, for example. He's firmly stressing the urgent need for a unified, sustainable regional military framework. The perspective from ECOWAS is clear. Overlapping, fragmented security initiatives simply won't cut it. They argue that only a highly coordinated regional force can actually stabilize West Africa. On the flip side, we have the Alliance of Sahelian States, comprising the military leadership of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. They present a decidedly different doctrine. Our sources show they're rejecting certain traditional multilateral frameworks, viewing them as heavily influenced by outsiders. Instead, they want to prioritize localized governance consolidation, internal economic integration, and the defense of a sovereign Sahelian space. In their view, this localized approach is just much more in tune with the immediate security realities their citizens are facing. And internationally, state actors remain split on the best course of action. You've got countries like Algeria leaning into a non-military strategy, focusing heavily on developmental aid and infrastructure projects in the Sahel to secure borders and build long-term stability. On the other hand, Western powers like the United States and France are attempting to maintain their traditional security partnerships and counterterrorism models. They're still providing intelligence and troop support to allies like Nigeria, but, they're having to navigate some pretty significant regional pushback against their military presence in the broader Sahel right now. Section 3. Public Sentiment and OSINT, the Digital Frontline. let's pivot to the digital frontline to gauge the reality on the ground. Our open source intelligence engines are picking up deeply negative public sentiment across these monitored areas. We're seeing widespread civilian frustration expressed online regarding perceived military ineffectiveness and state security failures. The data shows people are highly alarmed by the rapid territorial gains of these jihadist groups, as well as the unchecked rural banditry. On top of that, there's strong criticism aimed at authoritarian crackdowns on the press. Users are frequently pointing out that media censorship is severely limiting their situational awareness during an active crisis. Which brings us to Section 4, Strategic Watchlist and Forecast, Near-Term Trajectories. Looking back at the last 2 weeks gives us a stark timeline of accelerating hostilities. On June 10th, Intel models flagged warnings about extremist expansion in the tri-border areas. Just 5 days later, on June 15th, reports showed JNIM tightening a blockade around Bamako, putting serious coercive pressure on the capital's supply lines. By June 17th, open sources were reporting over 50 bandit and militant attacks in Nigeria's Katsina state in a single week. And all of this acceleration culminated directly on June 18th with a strategic attack involving explosions and gunfire at Diori Hamani International Airport in Niamey, Niger. Based on those specific indicators, our intelligence forecast proposes 3 main operational vectors you should be watching in the coming weeks. First, keep a close eye on the coercive encirclement of capital centers, especially Bamako, as insurgents try to strangle supply routes. Second, track the extremist spillover moving from the Sahel across the border into northwestern Nigerian states, like Zamfara and Sokoto. And third, assess the elevated surveillance risks and potential threats to international diplomatic sites and transport hubs. That recent incident at the Niamey Airport is exactly why this remains a priority watch item. Finally, Section 5. Access the full briefing. That wraps up the visual portion of our early morning briefing. We really urge you to take these insights and listen to today's full Stylo News Intel Update podcast on your favorite audio platform. It dives much deeper into the past 2 weeks of events. Also, make sure to subscribe at stylonews.com for AI-powered global news on demand. As we sign off, we'll leave you with this critical strategic question to think about before you switch over to the full podcast. With insurgent networks rapidly adapting and tightening their grip across borders, which of these fragile regional state alliances will actually possess the institutional resilience to weather the impending expansion of terror? Thank you for starting your day with us, and stay informed.